Good morning. It's a great pleasure to greet you and welcome you to the second day of this regional forum, Strengthening the Value Proposal of Women's Financial Inclusion, organized by Red Camif and Finequity ALC in order to promote financial inclusion, convened by SIGAP, Portal FinDev, and Antares Mujeres. My name is Mariana Martinez, and I'm the regional lead for Portal FinDev. Yesterday, we had great panelists from IDB Invest, UN Women, IOM, World Food Program, NACAF, Consumer Centric, Banca Mía Colombia, Paisa Mexico, ProMujer International, and Fundación Génesis Empresarial from Guatemala. And today we have a very active day. We'll see the experiences and lessons learned to strengthen the value proposal of women's financial inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean of BIDH Bank, the Dominican Republic, Banca Sol Bolivia, BBVA, Costa Rica, UN Women, Andares Mujeres, Capital Gene, Symbiotic, Deacon Impact, and the BCIA. Just like yesterday, the team moderators is composed by Andrea Rosales from Red Camif. How are you, Andrea? Good morning, all, and welcome. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Andrea. We are also here with Daniel Contreras from SIGAP. Hi, Mariana. Hi, all. Thank you for being with us. And my colleague from Portal FinDev, Virginia Brown. Hi, Virginia. Hi, all. Thank you for being with us. So we'll be working together so we can all participate in this event in an effective manner. Although many of you came here yesterday, we are going to ask you to introduce yourselves in the chat box. Remember that you will be able to use your video and microphones in the networking sessions that we have today, and also in some of the breakout rooms where we are going to ask for your active participation. I remind you to remain yourselves with your name and the name of your institution if you don't have a background like the one that we have today. And this is going to be very important for the breakout sessions and networking. Just like yesterday, we are going to have simultaneous interpretation in English. If you would like to listen to the Spanish version, you don't have to do anything, just stay in this channel. Let's remind you that this event wouldn't be possible without strategic partners for Red Camif, the national networks and the organizations that you see on screen. Simpromipe, ProDev, and IOM. Let's now share the agenda that we have for today. We are going to start with a brief networking session where we are going to be meeting each other. Then we are going to have a main speaker and then 3 breakout sessions, impact investment with a gender lens, financial products and services for women. And in the third breakout room, we will be discussing technological development, innovation, and women. So now we're going to ask you to go to the networking session hosted by FinEquity ALC and all the webinars that we hold for FinEquity. We want to share experiences, know each other, and Daniel is going to divide us in small groups of 3 people in a random manner. We are going to repeat that session twice. You don't have to do anything. Daniel will be sending you to different rooms, and we're going to ask you to introduce yourself to your colleagues. If you have your LinkedIn profile, please share it in the chat box. And please tell us what your institution is doing to have women at the center of financial inclusion. The idea is to share something of what we are doing in our entities, and we want to encourage the participation both in the plenary sessions and in the breakout rooms. Let me tell you that in the small groups, we are not going to have simultaneous interpretation into English because we only have two interpreters. So we are going to ask you for the help of those who do speak English and who could be a link between English speakers and Spanish speakers. So Daniel, please let us know how we go. We are going to the breakout rooms. Thank you, Mariana. As Mariana said, I'm going to be sending you to the breakout rooms. You are going to go there automatically. Then we are going to be coming back, and then we are going to another breakout room. It's going to be automatic, so you will not have to choose your breakout room. We are back in the plenary session. I hope that you enjoyed this networking session with Finequity ALC. We're going to tell you in the chat box how you can register to participate in the community of practice of Inequity ALC. I give the floor to Araceli Castillo, Executive Director of Red Camif, so that she can start with the main talk today. Thank you, Mariana. It's a great pleasure to greet you all. Thank you for being with us in this regional forum on how to strengthen the value proposal of financial inclusion for women. It's a great pleasure to spend this day with you. We have a great panel in this main talk. We are going to speak about financial ecosystems for women's development with Veronica Gavilanes, Deputy General Manager of Banco Sol. Good morning. Good morning, Araceli, and congratulations. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for being with us today. We also have Adrian Guzman, Vice President of SMEs and Microfinance of BHD Bank. Good morning, and thank you all for this invitation. Thank you, Adrian, for being with us. And we also have Barbara Magnoni, co-founder of Andares Mujeres. Good morning, Barbara. Hi, Araceli. Good morning, all. Thank you for the invitation. We are really excited to be here. Great. As you can see, we have a great panel with a lot of experience to share with us today. As I said before, we are going to be speaking about the financial ecosystem for women's development, and the idea is that we can talk with our panelists about their experiences and lessons learned in this area. We are going to start with Adrian and Veronica. Could you please share with us your experiences and lessons learned on your gender strategy and how the strategies contributed to the creation of products and services focused on women's needs? And Barbara, also, your lessons learned are welcome. Veronica? Thank you very much. The reality is that it's very important to focus on these conversations and mostly on the lessons learned, because when one wants to promote a strategy and accompany the financial inclusion and the promotion of businesses created by women, because this is important to help them have economic autonomy. Economic autonomy is so important because it's understood as women's ability to generate her own income and also make informed decisions. We know that when we accompany women, there's a multiplying effect. Everything improves. The the family well-being, education, food in the community. I would like to focus on what we have experienced at Banco Sol. Banco Sol is a leader in financial inclusion with a lot of reach in the country. It was born with a social vision 32 years ago. And obviously, why to promote a gender-based program at Banco Sol? Because it's already focused on the basis of the population. There's a very nice process, which is a lesson learned, because as a team, in collaboration with the board of the bank, the senior management, and the different tiers of management, we all worked on the creation of our future, understanding that our essence is financial inclusion. And we were asking ourselves, where should we improve? What should we promote to stay here for another 100 years in this market? That was very important for social inclusion in the country. So basically, that answer was we need to promote the bank's sustainability in a comprehensive manner. Sustainability understood as intentional actions to close gaps pertaining to poverty. And we know that women are currently at a disadvantage because most women are overrepresented in informal work, in poverty, and if that is our ambition, how are we going to do it? So that's very important to do this at strategic level. And then we get the mission, the vision, the values, and the strategic pillars of Bancasol for 2022. And we had a sustainable approach, a sustainable model to improve 11 of the SDGs. So my first lesson learned is that if we want to contribute to the ecosystem and the strengthening of women in Latin America and the Caribbean, there needs to be an intention, a commitment at the highest levels and senior management of the company. And then we can implement the strategy. And this is where we received important technical assistance from IFC. We were able to understand where we are, where we want to go, which are our main gaps and our main opportunities. And something very important, the voice of our clients, focus groups to listen to them, to understand what we had done well and what we were doing that had value and where we were failing. So that's another key message. If we want to promote the progress of women, we need to listen to them. We need to understand how to improve our proposal. And there's something very important here, which is the business expense. What are the gaps? What are the opportunities? What's the behavior of women as clients for the bank? And it is proven that women first are clients with a great value. You have been discussing this for years. Women pay better, obviously. They have they adopt products better. They want to save almost twice as much as other sectors. So we need to understand their value and have clear goals. And yes, after that, work with the value proposal, which in our case has financial aspects that are very much linked with the financial products and also the added value services. Knowledge, access to knowledge, but not just any knowledge, specific knowledge on the topics that they need. There are also tools and solutions. Digitalization is key. At the basis of the pyramid, we also need to be transformed so as not to leave them behind. As a financial institution, we want to have not only financial inclusion, but also digital inclusion. And we have the Avanza Mujer program, which was born there. It was tested first, and then it was launched last month with a great goal. The bank was to open the way to social bonds with a gender approach, and we have had accompaniment by IDB Invest, who are supporting us at macroeconomic level. It is a challenge to have this social bond and open up the path for sustainable investments, which is something very important. I will stop there. I think that it is very important to have a high level commitment, a strategic view, support from the board, working together, listening to the ladies, and internal sensitization to the entire organization. Why are women important? What are the biases that we have on the table? Because if we are not sensitive to the fact that our employees need to understand the goals first and the strategy first, we're going to be stumbling. We need to start at home all the time. This is something that we have discussed in the past. We need to start at home. Last year, there were 0 women in the higher management. Now we have 25%, and the board of directors has 50% of directors. So it's very important to include diversity. And these are the results, to include women in a holistic manner, and we can see the progresses in the field. Thank you very much, Veronica, for your experience. You have progressed a lot on this area. We have some questions already, but we are going to listen to Adrian first. Please share your experience, and then we are going to be reading the questions in the chat box. I will ask you that when you write a question, please let us know what institution you come from so as to make this process better. Thank you, Adrian. First, in this first phase, I would like to speak about the strategy. First, working on gender is a decision. It's not something casual. It has to be by design. Based on that, in 2014, the first thing we did, Bank BHG in the Dominican Republic is the second largest size, and it works at different levels. And we decided that the gender topic needed to be cross-cutting in all sectors of the bank. So in 2014, we started with a multidisciplinary team, which is the first thing to integrate all the views. And that group has stayed since 2014 with monthly meetings to give continuity and follow up to the strategy. And this shows the commitment from the bank's president. It's important to tell you that. Second, we went to the market and looked for strategic partnerships to conduct research that would tell us what women wanted, how women felt, and how we could assist them. And finally, we conducted specific activities. We designed an entire strategy, and we were able to launch the strategy in 2015. As a result of this first phase, we understood that there were 4 main topics referring to gender. First, a concern for individual well-being. Second, a concern for family well-being. Then, lack of time, because we needed to include time saving for women because they have multiple tasks but limited time. And the fourth thing, and mostly their hopes, is economic independence. When we started to understand all these topics, we focused on 5 aspects. First, businesses, a business case, and I need to add value to the business or the economic units that they have.
Education, which should not be separate from the first part, because this is where we say that it goes hand in hand. Another concern that women have is solutions for the home, for the household, and these are solutions that have to do with, and this is something that is very local maybe, but it had to do with roads and health. So those were the 5 approaches: business, education, household, road, and health. So all the strategies, all the products, all the services, or everything that we did had to have one of those 5 approaches. In the end, we came up with a holistic approach for the strategy with 4 pillars. The first one is the financial value proposal. And this financial value proposal comes with several basic products: savings, productive funding, and funding for household consumption, and insurance. In this same order. The other pillar has to do with corporate social responsibility. We cannot leave aside this very important leverage for an initiative of this sort. So this is where we launched Mujeres que Cambian el Mundo. You can watch it on YouTube. You can look for it with this title. We have version number 2, where we've elected women who have leadership in their areas of action. And these finalists are accompanied for a year in a program focusing on the different structures that the bank has precisely for this. We also focused on the prevention of cancer, breastfeeding, and violence against women. Anytime that this topic comes up, we launch a campaign focusing on violence against women. And another important thing is that we cannot work outside what we don't have inside. So this means that in terms of equality, the bank very quickly increased or elevated the levels that it had to work on and has won all the different prizes and awards. I'm not going to go into detail, but whatever we are working for the outside, we are also promoting inside. We've introduced these changes internally. The topic of harassment, for example, we have 7,200 employees at financial or wage equity, for example, equal pay, and all of these topics have been addressed. The third leverage, and I think is the most important one, is the non-financial value proposal. And this has 3 important elements: education in basic terms, elemental terms of from the financial point of view, training, which has a second tier because it entails specialization and everything dealing with networking. And what we did for this is that we allied ourselves with universities and with specialized centers in the development of value proposals for education. And for all this time, we have been working with interventions, working on programs like Mujeres Cara to bring the service to a second level, digitization as well for business, as well as for digital development in access to new channels and new products and new services. And we have also been working on an important element, something that we realized a bit late, but we reacted in time: how women see themselves in their own role and how she understands that society perceives her and what is the role that society assigns to her. So, in terms of image, or in terms of how she projects herself and the things that she needs to do, we have provided accompaniment in a very solid way. If I have a chance later on, Araceli, I will speak about the results and the lessons learned of these 12 years. Thank you, Adrian and Veronica, for sharing your experiences and your lessons learned. We are going to continue speaking about this. Barbara, could you please share with us or tell us about the experience that Andares Mujeres has had as a network with the participation of many institutions from several countries? You work with a lot of emphasis in developing women. What have you identified in these institutions as barriers to opportunities in the leadership of women in the sector? Thank you, Araceli. And thank you to Veronica and Adrian for sharing your experiences. I think that when we listen to those experiences, we think that maybe the problem of equality has been solved because we have leaders here that are showing this amazing leadership in place that levels the ground for men and women. But to start, I would like to go back a bit and remind ourselves that this balancing out is not widespread, but rather these are very particular exceptions that we are listening to right now. And this is why we have Andares. There is a survey, or there was a survey that took place several years ago, but I thought was very interesting. They asked in Latin America, they asked men and women, which percentage of the CEOs in the companies worldwide are women? And in average, the answers said that 25% were women. However, the reality is that at that time, it was just 3%. So sometimes our perceptions are that there are far more women leaders and that there is far more equality than what we truly have. And this is what we are seeing now. Worldwide, we still experience this inequality at a management levels, and this is due to several aspects or several things. I'm going to refer first to a survey of he for she from the UN, but we can also speak about the experience of Andares later on. And this survey asks about the barriers or the hurdles. And first of all, they speak about something that I think is really interesting. I think that the two speakers have mentioned briefly that this is the perception that the woman has of herself and how she projects herself before others. 51% of men in the survey already knew early on in their career that they wanted to become general managers or executives, whereas only 33% of the women had the same perception. These perceptions brand you. They mark your way, your pathway, your future, your interactions, and how you handle opportunities and challenges. Another important thing that we found in this survey is that 41% of the women say that a significant hurdle is not having a professional network available. And all of this links itself because 40% is afraid of failure. 40% is concerned with the balance between the household and the workplace. 36% speaks about not having mentors. And I'll leave it there because there's many barriers, but those were the main ones. So why Andares? Why Andares? What we always say informally is that we are the whiskey. What do I mean by that? Well, many of the men that historically have led the industry gather after work hours. They share a whiskey, they share, they win an award, they talk, they learn. How do you do this? How did you handle risk? This and that. Oh, you get the collateral, and how do you do it? How did you go about it? So these are very important professional relationships and lessons learned. But women don't always have time to do this because they have these double responsibilities. And so they are not able to participate in these informal activities, and maybe they're not even invited to them. So they miss out on learning opportunities and networking. So what Andares is looking for, and I can continue speaking about this later, but what Andares seeks is to join the women. We work remotely in seminars such as this one. We also have little cafes or gatherings in the mornings or in the afternoon when we have in-person events to foster a professional networking, mentoring, and learning. And this is what we're headed to. We want to make this a bit more feminine to encourage the participation of women in the industry. It's more than 500 women in 17 countries that speak Spanish who are gathering in these fashions. So I leave you with this. Thank you, Barbara. I have participated in those meetings and it's really interesting. The experience is really nice of everybody sharing amongst themselves. Adrian and Veronica, we listened to Barbara and to yourselves as well speak about the challenges of creating leadership among women in our institutions. Could you share with us very briefly what are the lessons learned or what are the changes that have happened internally so that you could develop careers for women in your institutions? If I may, it was rather easy for us to do it. We still don't have a significant participation of women at an N1 level, meaning the leadership that is right below the president. But however, we have four. We have four at that level, but they're not majority. But we have a significant participation. In the bank, overall, 54% of the positions at any level are occupied by women because it's a bank that provides multiple services. In my team, I have 17 persons and I only have 2 men. So they are mostly women. When they all sit together in the office, what I do is I step out and I let them come in agreement because they're always very active and they generate a lot of ideas. So we established also and we launched as a country proposal and it was finally approved the topic of the license or the permit after giving birth. And as a country, we promoted the topic of having men. The men employees in the bank also have a longer period of time to accompany the women in the time after she has given birth. We have areas for breastfeeding in the main areas of the bank where the largest number of women were present. And we also created this area sponsored by the bank in other entities in public institutions outside the bank. The other thing that we worked on was something that had to do with developing, from the women's point of view, on non-conventional learning. For example, we have a summer program when the children of the employees come, and we started introducing topics on technology and engineering for girls, daughters of employees who would attend the program. After that, the program was very successful, so we extended it to 2 universities, and we started working with women who are studying careers in engineering. And so we bring them here as interns, and the internship includes, for example, a trip to Colombia, which was the latest one, to visit a technology company in operations so that they could see how the company actually runs. And the whole topic of rights and obligations regarding gender and equality are things that have been very rigid so far. The person who steps out of the line just leaves the institution. On topics of harassment, on topics of straight reporting anonymously or whistleblowing. We had very significant cases during the pandemic. We developed a code message, and the bank had to intervene. We had several painful situations in which we had to work on these types of situations. So what we foster outside is something that we evidently need to incorporate inside, because without passion, then the road becomes really long. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for this teaching, Veronica. Thank you, Adrian. I think that this bank is a very important bank that has opened the way, is a trailblazer in this process. I was familiar with it in 2017 in the Oli Star Academy that we organized, and everything that you have done is very important. Congratulations. In driving leadership forward, like Barbara was saying, there's still a road ahead by the institutions, and there needs to be internal coherence, as I was saying, is something that should start internally. We need to do a self-assessment. In our case, we work in a very interesting work with a third party, and they did a deep assessment following the guidelines of the WEPs, the Women's Empowerment Principles, and all our interest groups carried out cross-cutting surveys to all the organization, and they did so internally with the civil society, with our stakeholders, or our shareholders, our regulators. It was a very broad survey, and this was very interesting because it helped us to understand where we were holistically. Internally, we have also walked a long path with redesigning the policies. We've implemented a policy on gender equality. We've implemented everything that has to do with revising the selection process, the hiring process, and the development of women, or onboarding, the professional and development process with a specific approach to cultivate our high authority so that they can be cultivated in their growth. And we want to foster the inclusive internal policies. Our bank has a significant quality, and it is that we're a wonderful bank. We are among the 10 top entities in the country. We are the second bank with the most employees after the public bank or the government bank. 52% of our collaborators are women, 48% of the middle management, meaning the chiefs of units, are women. And we had the opportunity in top management, and we made this significant change. So 25% are at an N1 level. We have a goal, and the goal is intentional. We want to close the gap of the participation of women towards 2025. This is part of a KPI that is measured with sustainability. This is intentionally set. We have a goal of 54% of having women directors in the bank. So evidently, we are very intentional in this, and we need to acknowledge our shareholders because these are very they are very committed to the topic, and so this is strategic for us. And in another indicator that we are also being intentional, numerically speaking, is on the participation of women in the areas in scientific areas of the bank: science, engineering, areas of risk, areas of transformation, areas of advanced analytics, of data governance. And so we are looking intentionally to close a gap. For example, we know that in the world there's less participation of women in these types of careers, and therefore we are also on the path of establishing alliances with universities in order to be inclusive, and also in order to look at the skills of our own collaborators. I think that this has been very beneficial. Training in the topics of subconscious biases is something important. For example, in the drive for sales, to address the women's market, but a little bit also to understand how the culture has to contribute also in this sense. And we've spoken about a concept, the soul generation, because we say, how do we address communication in an assertive way, or in a way that is inclusive, evidently? And we all call ourselves the soul generation. This is how we label ourselves: young men and women, because 80% of the organization is made up by millennials. We are now embracing centennials, and 25% of the organization is centennial. But we have the X generation, the baby boomers, and why now you see women in the N1 line. So to not speak about men, women, young, old, we are all the soul generation, and we have this commitment of making a bank that is more inclusive, more intentional, a bank that contributes and closes gaps. So I think that communication and leadership is something that has been important. We've gone over the country. We visit the country twice a year, and we did it last year and this year in order to communicate and to explain, to evangelize. This is a process that is never ending. As part of the topics with barriers, we know that there's a two-sided thing here. Responsibilities on women, and this also has an impact on her possibility of becoming a leader. Will I be able to take this on? So we've done a very nice project called Commercial Process, in which one of the benefits is to balance out the time with family. We all know that operations of financial inclusion requires a lot of work for people out in the field, and if we want women to be out in the field and to have opportunities to continue growing, we need to balance out the workload with institutions. So another thing that is being discussed for women to move forward is the economy of care. How can organizations, how can we support this economy so that women can have this type of balance that is so necessary? The breastfeeding areas is another thing we've done, and everything dealing with creating safe spaces, lines for reporting harassment, values, and other things. There are things that just are not allowed in this institution. Thank you. Thank you, Veronica, for creating this soul generation. Barbara? Well, we've heard Adrian and Veronica and the strategies that they have implemented in their institutions, focusing on with the idea of developing the careers of women internally. How do you, as an Andares network, what can you share with us as an Andares network to accomplish a strategy of this nature? It needs to be at a board level. The decision has to be at their level. So what participation, what have they had, and how have you been able to raise more awareness, or to have more intentionality in the board, specifically on gender topics? Well, it's not easy, but this is something that we have heard both from Adriana and Veronica. The topic of starting internally is key, because if I care for, if I provide services for women clients, and I have men in my branches and in my management positions and in my boards, I am not communicating the message that I think women are able, or that I believe in the development and the well-being of women. I am communicating a message that says that either I make a lot of money from women and it's good for me to have her as a client, or I am doing social work for women, but men are the ones who are able. And this is a mistaken message, of course. This is a message that does not reflect empowerment. the empowerment that we want for our institutions. And so the boards that have changed have considered this need. And to to be truthful, it is very interesting for me to have a panel with investors, but I need to think about this as well. We need to think about the investors who assign a representative in the board. They are a white man from Europe who is 35 years old, who has nothing in common with the end user or the end client. And this is where it all starts, right? And so we need to think about this because there are not many spaces in these boards. And if you take one of these positions with these profiles, you are losing or you are wasting an opportunity for representation, one that is important. So everybody in this ecosystem has to become responsible for assigning women and persons who represent the needs of the people, the end client, in their boards. And this is being done gradually. And I think that the drive of the investor or of the donor is key in this place, but also from the inside, because there are large boards that are born from the country itself with this commitment and they understand it fully. And we need to respect them and not change them when we come with foreign investment, for example. I think this is something that we need to acknowledge. Something that I didn't mention before, but this word, this phrase about starting in home is a paper that is wrote with the support of several institutions. It's a document in which we were able to quantify in 136 microfinance entities which percentage in each tier or in each area in each level management area represented women, and we discovered that only 18% of the board chairs were represented by women, and we think that it remains the same. 31% of the boards are represented by women. In general roles, there was only 28% of women. And as you go down, then from the top management, you find a bit more representation of women, which was 39%. And in the payroll, it was almost 50-50%. 53% were women. So we still have this problem as a pyramid of not having at the top the right message, the message that women are a generator, that women can also generate economic power as well as growth in the country. And this is what we really need to communicate. I'm going to leave my other comments on how for the next intervention because I don't want to talk too much, but I just needed to highlight these topics. Thank you, Barbara. Before we close, we're going to read some of the questions. Gustavo Muchotrigo asks, in some of the countries, access to academic preparation or professional preparation for women or girls is null or zero, especially in the rural areas. Have you come across these situations and what can you do from your institutions? Who would like to answer? This goes along the lines with what Adrian was saying. In our case, as a financial institution, we have to seek allies. And evidently, we don't need to do it all. But if you have a perspective in which you want to be intentional, and we evidently inside, we have all the information dealing with closing gaps that are specifically, and there are technical areas as well. So for example, we have special content that we look for with allies in order to favor the closing of gaps in favor of women. And there are also institutions, and this is something that we have worked with along with Arte para la Humanidad in providing technical trainings. We train them in electricity and plumbing. These are women who are in Santa Cruz, and these are transforming projects, to tell you the truth. So we need to find the allies. We need to understand that they comply with our purpose, that they align themselves. We need to have the success indicators aligned, and we need to accompany the program with funds. I think we are becoming catalyzers of the funds or the resources that are needed in order to train women. And then we need to push them forward as part of this program, there's a program in which they provide their services once they've been trained out to the community. In the issue of girls and young women, we have schools for social capital. And in here, there's a lot to be done. After the pandemic, the setback of children and adolescents in their education has been absolutely critical. And so we have specific programs that complement the education of schools. We don't want to give the same information, but rather we want to complement in areas of opportunity. We also have the San Jose Foundation here in La Paz, and we have schools, conscious schools, because boys and girls evidently need this process so that they are able to handle or to manage their own tools so that they can perform better academically. There are multiple efforts that can be implemented. There's also an alliance with the academics, for example, in order, or the academia rather, to drive forward these specific areas on technological progress, everything dealing with the user experience, the UX, the UIs. These are technical careers that are not terribly complex, but there's young people who would need to be trained on it. Where we see is financial institutions transformed is when we link and when we bring together the ecosystem online systems that are needed to drive women forward. Thank you. Veronica, Adrian, how do you manage the risk of offering loans? This is a question from Rocio Cespedes. Which type of financial products are focused on women and which have the highest demand? Well, I have my gloves on with the topic of risk because the fruit of our learnings of all these years is something that we have been working on, and we follow this criteria. It's true that women have a best ratio for paying on time in the portfolio. When we break it down, comparing them to their equal segments, women are better in repaying the loans. So in 2024, I have the hopes of winning the battle that we are waging, in the sense that we want to, meaning that if that's the reality, how can this be transferred onto the risk models so that it can end up being a differentiated rate, not by gender, but rather by behavior? So this is the first element that I believe is important. The second thing, what is more interesting to women as an entry product? Well, it's the accounts. So we have a participation of women of close to 96%. Close to 96% of the women have an account, and not so with loans. Only 46% have current loans. I am speaking about the women who have productive activity going on. However, our anchor project, the one that brought us into this process, is the Woman Credit Card. This is how it's called. It's a Visa credit card, whose value notion behind the credit card was looking or aiming at all the areas associated to women, uterus cancer, travel assistance, road assistance. All it was missing was a husband, I think. And women would say it themselves, because we were coming across situations where women would say, oh, my washer breaks down and it's 8 p.m. and I need to do the laundry. What do I do? Well, the credit card would include it, so that she would call a hotline, and then the technician would come and would bring a washing machine to replace the one that was not working, and would take the one that wasn't working and would fix it, and the bank would pay for that service. The same if you have a flat tire in the road, then she can call the hotline immediately. They have someone come on a motorcycle and the person solves any issues that she might have. So we were working following those lines. And in the case of entrepreneurs, the value proposal for the credit card is more for her day-to-day job. My engine or the refrigerator broke down. The one I used to sell ice cream broke down. So this is associated to this value proposal. And everything dealing with insurance, which is new, is focalized on the on gender, and it has been very important for us.
But we started by defining where a production unit was led by a woman. 92% of women we have. do production through their personal ID, and only 6.5% does it through a company that has been established. Because of the financial information, we know that more than 41% of shares belong to the women. So we understand that it's a formal company that has a woman as the leader, and we are working on standardizing all that at country level in terms of public policy. Something important. Women don't want to be differentiated. They want to be treated with equality. If you give this to that person, I should have the opportunity to have it as well. What do I mean by that? There shouldn't be a pink product that is designed specifically for women. No, it needs to be a product that works for all, and with an approach or intervention or value proposal, you give it a gender lens. And that's necessary to understand the product. Differentiation or price needs to be according to the risk. There shouldn't be any difference in terms of level of attention. The starting point of the value proposal needs to be the same. Differentiation has to do with some elements of execution. We've seen, for example, in our case, that women represent 40% of total value, 40% in terms of products and balances. Another important element here, if I were an investor and have two banks, one with a clear gender strategy and another with no gender strategy, well, the investment is tacit. Now, the problem or the opportunity is, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. We shouldn't be reacting, but acting in a conscious manner, focusing on a large segment on the market. And if it had the same condition as the other, I can assure you that the GDP of countries would be in a different situation. Thank you, Adrian, Veronica, Barbara. We could continue having this talk, but time is up. I invite you to answer the questions that are still unanswered in the chat box. So thank you very much for your participation. Mariana? Thank you, Araceli, and all of you. We are very inspired. We are going to have a discussion on impact investment under a gender lens. In room 1, we're going to have 3 rooms today. In room number 1, we are going to have simultaneous interpretation into English. The rest are fully in Spanish. If we could have the slide for room 1, we are going to be discussing impact investment with a gender lens. Araceli will be the moderator of this session. Those who are in this session will not have to move. You can stay in the plenary. We have Chuck Olson, managing partner of Enabling Capital, Maritza Pareda, senior associate for investment, ALC Symbiotics, Griselda Ponce, structuring head of BCIE, Rachel Murphy, DTech Impact, and Maria Liliana Moore, Pro Mujer, Director for Development. In room number 2, we're going to be speaking about support provided to women's businesses through financial products and services designed for women. We have Mariano Frontera moderating room number 2. You may select room 2 or room 3. Here we have as panelists Jose Chegoyen, Global Specialist from IFC, Maria Cecilia Lazarte, Main Specialist in Financial Inclusion for LAC from UN Women, Margarita Saldaña, Advisor for Business and Financing, Sempromipe, and Eva Carvajal de Toribio, Executive Vice President for Businesses from ADOPEM. Room number 3, we will be discussing technological development, innovation, and women with Maria Rojas from Redcom as moderator. We'll hear the experience from BBVI, Elizabeth Prado, and we are also going to see the experience of Grameen Costa Rica with Douglas Reynolds. So let's go to the different rooms. Remember, room 1, impact investment. You don't need to move. You can stay here. It's going to be in Spanish, but with simultaneous interpretation available. And you may also choose room 2, support to women's businesses, and room 3, technological development innovation. Thank you very much and welcome. Thank you for staying in this room. We will be discussing access to impact investment with a gender lens. Although Mariana has already introduced the panelists, I would like to mention them again. We are going to have Chuck Olson, Managing Partner for Enabling Capital. Welcome, Chuck. Maritza Pereda, Senior Investment Associate from ALC Symbiotics. Hi, Maritza. Thank you, Maritza. Griselda Ponce, Head of Structuring of the BCIA, Central American Integration Bank, CABIA. Rachel Murphy, Senior Impact Officer for Detkin Impact. Hi, Rachel. Hi, good morning. And Maria Liliana Moore, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Development for ProMujer. Welcome, Maria. We cannot hear you, Maria. Let's try. Let's test, Maria. Thank you. I mean, the microphone has not been activated. Thank you. We're all ready. And let's start now. The learning objective for this conversation is to learn how impact investment with a gender lens guarantees to funders that economic resources will be focused on initiatives that will generate a positive impact on women. We are going to have a conversation so that we can all have a dialogue. I invite you to share the experience of integrating a gender approach in your institutions. Please, Chuck, if you could start. Perfect. My name is Chuck Olson. I am a managing partner of Enabling Capital. And if you haven't heard about Enabling Capital, I'm not offended because we are a very young institution. We have been operating for only 3.5 years. We started operations, we created the company in 2020, and we started making investments in May 2020. And I don't know if you remember, but from January to May, there was an important event around the world. It was COVID, the COVID pandemic. And we launched the company precisely during the COVID pandemic. And we created the company with some ideas, with a lot of encouragement to do something new based on the principle of doing substantial things. With regard to our gender inclusion approach, and last summer, in 2022, we started a project working with our microfinancial clients through an analysis of what could be the support that we could provide financial institutions so that they can have more financial inclusion. And after that, we were working with a consultant and other people to collect information and work with our clients. This survey was really interesting. And after all this, we realized that there are simple things that we can do to help our institutions change so that they can have more financial inclusion. So that initiative sought to develop a fund to expand investments for financial inclusion. But before starting with this project, in the past 6 months, we decided to conduct an internal evaluation of how we are doing in terms of financial inclusion and women's participation in the company. We conducted analysis from the bottom up to see the hiring processes, the different procedures in our current funds, how we could improve things. And we realized that on the one hand, we are not doing that bad, but there are still things that we can improve. In terms of numbers, we have 41% of women working in the company, 50% of the heads of department are women, but where we fell is in the management team. 0% of women in the management team. So precisely because of that, we are pretty sensitive to the things that we could do to improve our procedures on these aspects. And we already have a list of areas where we can improve. And now we are starting with another pilot program, working with the Columbia University and with the same consultant. I think that you know her, Barbara McNugget, and she's guiding us in this project as well. We started only a week ago or 2 weeks ago with another in-depth survey, a more in-depth study with 2 institutions to see how we can improve financial inclusion for those 2 institutions. What we realized is that in all the surveys and studies we have conducted, there are simple things that we can change. We don't need to change the world to open the doors and be more inclusive. What we want to do with this project is to do more in-depth changes with another 2 or 3 financial institutions. So this is what we are working on. And I will stop speaking there. Thank you very much, Chuck, for sharing your experience. And we are going to be discussing a little bit that in the future. Let me remind all participants that you can write your questions in the chat box. I invite you to include your name and your institution so that our panelists can continue. Maritza, tell us a little bit about how Symbiotech has been able to implement the gender approach. To generate a change, we need to see ourselves. Specifically, we started with a strategy on governance and analysis, which is a complementary version of our financial analysis. And we started that 1.5 years ago, and we were able to identify that SDG 5. Gender equality is one of the most important aspects in our portfolio. And after that, in these attempts of including the gender approach, we became part of the 2X collective. And just to explain, our investments need to have a gender approach, and this implies that we need to make adjustments to our indicators. We added more specific questions for our clients, and we also conducted a more in-depth review on the work that the financial institution is doing right now. It could be from taking a look to the human resources manuals to see that there's no discrimination in the candidate pool, that we don't ask for photos, that we don't ask for the marital status, the credit analysis internally. It is important that inside the institution and also to the client, we have inclusion, and the credit analysis should have analysis. If there is harassment, there need to be exclusive channels where they can send their complaint, and clients should also be able to file a complaint. If we think about the gender approach and when we remember our clients, many of them say that they go to an institution because they didn't ask you aggressively, what are you coming here for? Or, but what can I do for you? And this is why clients came to the institution, the treatment they receive, and also the different programs. So going back to inclusion, we have included indicators that help us analyze the treatment to the end client and also the entire institution. For example, the number of women in the board of directors, the management team, and also if there are initiatives within the institution that develop the gender approach. For example, there is an institution that is developing a product that doesn't require the spouse's signature, but that depends on the legislation in the country. And the different funds that we manage, we have one that is focused on Africa. And among the efforts of the institution, our reports need to have a gender approach as well, so that we can provide better information about the current situation of clients. And also the data collection that we do need to understand better the client situation and provide technical assistance according to their needs. Thank you very much, Maritza. Briseida, if you could tell us about the experience of the Central American Economic Integration Bank. Kabir. I would like to thank Red CAMIF and the sponsors for creating this space to exchange information. I think that access to investment under a gender lens is important. We need to share these experiences and create a gender approach within the institution in an intentional manner with a purpose. Among the measures that I would like to mention is the first aspect is corporate governance. It needs to become part of the institutional strategy. We need to integrate them through a cross-cutting approach or through strategic guidelines. And this automatically makes a deployment fosters deployment in the entire organization. There's commitment that comes from the inside of the organization so that when it goes out, it will have the impact that we are expecting. Also, we need to make our commitment public. This is key for the gender approach. And if it's possible, we need to certify it. And very in line with what was said before, it's important to take a look at those indicators that we have. Just as it is important to take a look at the economic indicators, it is also important to see if we have robust indicators for our performance on how we are having an impact on the closing of that gap. I believe that it is also important to have external sources that have the same commitment and that allow us to bring better resources to the funding for women, because the guarantees make financial conditions higher. The more procedures we have, implying the adoption of credit products, it makes it more costly. So we need to have better financial conditions in the cycle. Another important aspect is the training centers, the academia, technical assistance. This is key to provide products and services to women. We need to close the gaps in terms of knowledge, behavior, and financial education, because we haven't been taught at personal level, mostly women, to handle money. We're good at that naturally, but we also need to be aware that there are better ways to do business. So we need to have a gender approach without neglecting economic performance. Another thing that I would like to mention is that we need to include in our sustainable models the digital transformation approach that allows us to reach more women faster and send them business information, financial education, and specific accompaniment. Many women tell us, I need advice in payment methods. I need advice to be present in social media. So training in financial education evolves fast. And we are going to make it if we transform ourselves digitally. There need to be products focused on women. There are many indicators. We need to take a couple of them according to the region. You cannot see all indicators, but it's important to have a chronological approach that allows us to have also human resources who know about this subject matter so that we can achieve gender equality in our products. Thank you very much, Briseida. A lot of experience on how you have included the gender approach in the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. Rachel, the experience of DITCAM impact. Thank you very much. And I start by sharing that DITCAM Impact is a Canadian fund management company. We manage 5 funds with a gender approach that invest 100% of the portfolio in the Caribbean. Our main objective is to impact on financial inclusion, gender equality, and climate change. Our investment strategy with a gender approach started with the recognition that it's one of the most important challenges and opportunities today, and that we need to include all these gender metrics with an intention in our work in order to achieve those objectives. Initially, we developed our strategy in one of the funds, which is the Fund for Women's Empowerment of ILU. This is something that we did in partnership with ProMujer, my colleague Iliana here. And this is where we understood how we were going to do it before doing the rollout with the entire company. And here I would like to add that for us, investing with a gender approach is not about where to invest. That's important, but perhaps more important is how to invest. And in this process, we have integrated gender metrics and considerations at each step to measure, monitor, and make decisions based on gender performance. precisely with the purpose of improving performance within the companies and the communities that they serve. So the first thing that we do is to look for commitment. And I believe that the word commitment is important because we don't have the expectation that all institutions will be leading in the gender issue from day one. But the most important thing is that the leadership has that commitment and openness to work with us, and including the gender approach in their institutions. In the face of due diligence, very similar to what Maritza was saying, we do an assessment and we find a lot of gender metrics in all areas. We designed a tool that's called the Gender Scorecard, where we assess the company in four main areas. First, leadership and governance. Second, products and services, marketing and communication. Third, equality in the job place. And fourth, equality in the value chain. And through that assessment, we are able to identify both the strengths and the areas for improvement. And based on those areas for improvement, we establish gender teams, gender goals that we want to achieve within the term of the intervention. And this takes me to an important finding in the last years, which is that although this assessment has gender goals, it sheds light on the areas for improvement and the roadmap for the future. Through monitoring, we have found that the institutions themselves sometimes don't have the ability, resources, or time to achieve these goals on their own. So we've had the fortune to have resources from technical assistance with the support of USAID and accompany companies and their portfolio so they can achieve their gender goals and improve their practices internally and externally to achieve it in real time. So specifically, I'm speaking about a program that we implemented together with ProMujer, and we accompanied 15 companies in their portfolio in that process. And from that experience, we have taken those lessons learned to our entire portfolio. So it has been a wealth of experience, constant learning, and I stay there.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Liliana, would you please share with us? We've been told about several of the things by Rachel, but maybe you can also share. Yes, thank you. So ProMujer, for those of you who don't know, is a social enterprise that was born more than 30 years ago in Bolivia and which has physical presence now through philanthropic work and microfinancing institutions in 5 countries in the region. But like Chuck was saying, after the pandemic, the capacity to innovate was turned on and we wanted to reach women with specific needs. So we have a platform that is called Emprende. So we are present in 23 countries in the region in very few years, reaching to more than 40,000 women. So I would like to address one of the topics that I wanted to mention was the ILU Empowerment Fund. To not go into details because Rachel already spoke about this, but ProMujer in all of its purpose, not just with this fund, ILU, but also ever since we started working in 2019 with the ILU fund. And when we launched the fund in the Women Deliverance Conference in Vancouver, one of the things that ProMujer said is that the 4 genders are going to permeate and have conversations for all operations and for all the projects in which we work. And like Rachel was saying, let me give you examples. So leadership of women, or rather women in leadership position, not just in boards, but also in management positions. And so ensure that more than 51% of the women are present, that we have the voice of women, the perspective of women in these decision-making process. We find that to be strategic. Another of the things that we have addressed significantly is why don't we support and give funding and give technical assistance to companies and organizations that are focused in generating products and services focused on women and girls? There are many services, for example, health, that were focused mostly on men. So why not invest in these companies or support these companies technically because they are generating products that are fitting the health needs of women. For example, with sexual health and reproductive health. So we're supporting the 360 Fund, which is a fund that is focusing on progress in health for women in Latin America. Another of the lens, as I was saying, is the value chain. It's the value chain. The value chain for us is extremely important. This is a tangible example that we need to preach and practice. So ProMujer has the Latin American Fund of Investment with a gender lens. This is what we've done. We started 4 times. We've done it 4 times. We started in Merida in 2020, and then in 2021, we held it virtually because of the pandemic. In 2022, we went to Guatemala along with the FICEN in Central America and the Caribbean. And this year we did it in Medellin, Colombia. And one of the nicest thing was that we were able to choose all the vendors. And the vendors, all of them were companies led by women or that had the purpose of supporting women, even from the name tag, from the food to the DJ in the party, as well as not just in this event, which was extremely valuable, but also with the vendors that they are working with in ProMujer. One of our purposes internally is WEPS, the Women Empowerment Principles. They have certain requirements, and so we carry out an assessment, and we internally in the microfinancing institutions and in the country representations, we are working to ensure that we internally are also applying these gender perspectives so that we can then go out and invest, like Rachel was saying, in companies and provide technical assistance. And if we don't do it internally, then it's going to be extremely difficult to apply it or to use it for third parties. So this is one of the things. I would also like to mention that what else we are doing with a gender lens approach? Well, our clients, our beneficiaries, more than 90% of the beneficiaries that ProMujer has are women. Most of them are micro entrepreneurs. Many of them during these 30 years have become entrepreneurs from a small medium enterprise. They started with community banking and then individual loans, and then they moved on to receiving funding from others, and then it starts with ProMujer. But I think this has been very important. Another thing is education. Griselda was saying how financial education is not necessarily enough, but also fostering entrepreneur skills. And we do it through our platform. We have women who carry out subsistence entrepreneurship. They are the ones that come out in the videos and in the content speaking about their own living conditions and how they have been able to find possibility of loan and market access. And so we need to speak woman to woman and have them speak about the conditions that they're in, and not someone who has a super business speaking to someone who has a small business, but rather we work from these specific actions, and ProMujer has fostered investment with a gender lens. The event, the forum, is an event where we bring together investors, international donors, entrepreneurs, and small entrepreneurs from remote areas so that they can start talking about the barriers. What support is there available? What are we missing? So we are going to continue doing this. And lastly, we launched the first 2 negotiable requirement or like gender bonuses from Argentina. And we did this year. And there's something interesting here. We helped to change the regulations from local regulators so that they could implement, so that civil society could create these types of services. So we, little by little, are injecting or working or contributing to different topics, direct investment that has an impact, and then other mechanisms on dealing with microfinance so that investment can be consolidated with a gender approach in Latin America. Thank you, Maria Liliana. To those participants who would like to ask a questions live, since we have this excellent panel present, if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand or turn on your camera and ask the questions yourself. You are invited to do so. We've heard about the topic of how gender investment has to come from the strategy. and how it has to be disseminated internally and externally, how we have to develop products and indicators. In inclusive finances, since a long time ago, it is women who have had the funding. So how can you show that through investment in financial institutions, in the institutions that you work with, uh, how have you actively contributed to gender equality? Could you share some examples with us, some data or actions that you're carrying out now or hope to carry in the future as institutions? Would you like to start, Chuck? This is a great question. One thing that I wanted to mention is that when microfinance started, there was always a proper follow-up on the use of funds. And little by little, the industry has lost this tradition or this way of working. Part of it is due to cost, and part of it is because it's less practical. And what we have seen is that follow-up on the use of funds is not only helpful to inclusivity, uh, to have more access to provide more access to women, but it also improves the credit process because when an institution understands why they are using or the reason why they are using the funds, then they learn and they don't have any proxy or a woman comes and gets the money and then gives it over to her husband. So I think that part of what we have seen is that it's a loss. It's lost to the industry in the sense that there's less follow-up and less monitoring on the use of funds. And I think that this has to be solved. We need to find a mechanism, an economic mechanism in order to provide this follow-up, because I think this is part of the problem. Institutions more and more are becoming more efficient and they are competing for every cent. And so I think that it would be very important for institutions to go back or to adopt measures in order to improve the monitoring of the use of funds. There are certain markets that continue to do so, but there are other markets that continue speaking about it, but they don't exactly do something about it. So I think that this is where a significant change can come, easy change can come to improve the processes in within the institutions themselves. And this will improve the inclusivity of the loans. And I think this is just an idea, or this is one of the things that we have seen or that we are discussing in our conversations with the institutions with which we work. Thank you, Chuck. We have a question over here by Edwin Alexander. Could you please turn on your camera and ask the question with your microphone? Yes, hello, good morning. From El Salvador, I am the CEO of Eldera del Campo. We are a fintech for assets. The question is three-pronged or based on three words that you spoke of. The first one is with the collateral and accessing cheap loans. Which mechanisms have you identified to implement them? And the second thing is capillarity of the funds or of these bonds onto this sector that is needing it. And the third question, something that was just mentioned now, is a comprehensive strategy with the gender lens from the beginning when the product is formulated. I think that in this global notion of having a gender impact and thematic bonds and climate change and women, all of these are very closely related. In the agro sector, we have lots of experience that in knowing that women are far better clients than men are in the sector, but I think it's 12% only still. So based on this, which strategies have you taken to include fintechs within this pillar that will allow this capillarity? Thank you, and sorry for taking so long to ask the question. Would anybody care to answer the question, or do I assign it? Edwin? Oh, Maritza, Griselda, Rachel, Maria. Oh, the question is for everybody. Anybody can answer because you all spoke about this. Maritza? Fintech is something that we are still developing in Latin America. This is something that we've developed in Europe mostly. And about your question on collateral, this depends on the institution and the analysis done. I would not be able to determine it right here and there, but it depends on the company, the country, and the legislation. So on the topic of gender, before we give a loan, what you were saying, when giving a specific loan, there are gender bonds as well, and they are specifically created to open jobs for micro entrepreneurs. It could be education, for example, but this also goes in line, at least in our case, it focuses on the fact that we have several funds and they each have their own requirements and risk assessments for each client. But I think that this is an opportunity that might be explored. Institutions that are focused on fintechs and mostly on startups that can receive support with having this approach. Thank you, Maritza, Griselda, Rachel. Would you like to expand on this? I would like to say that financial institutions in the region are in a process of understanding and adopting fintechs. And so what's important now is to fully understand who is your financial institution that is the anchor and what their policies are and how do they make each one of the projects bankable in order to allow them to offer guarantees and to address the question that all banking institutions ask. How are you going to pay me back? And so if you identify or if you already have a funder, it's important for us to open ourselves with our funders so that we can provide them with sufficient information in order for them to understand your business model. This is going to allow you to have better conditions. It's important to work with a credit record with one or two institutions so that we can then open the path for ourselves to get the funding. Thank you, Griselda. Rachel, would you like to share the experiences or for investment in the work that you're doing with financial institutions, and how have you been able to show that you are contributing in an equitable manner related to gender? Yes, of course. Well, I think that the best way to look at the benefits is through real examples, through real life examples. I wanted to tell you about an experience that we had with a microfinancing entity in the south of Mexico. It's called Avanza Solido, and it works mostly with women in rural areas. And we carried out an initial investment with the institution of $1 million several years ago. And it was through our assessment for the gender scorecard that we were able to identify certain areas for improvement. One of the areas was the representation of women in leadership positions. And so one of the objectives that we set forth at that time was to promote diversity, specifically to promote women to management positions. Additionally, it was evident that Avanza Solido is and continues to be a company with a lot of social approach, but at that time, they didn't have a commitment that was formalized or that had an impact, and specifically, it was not gender focused. And so the first thing they did is that when we closed the investment, is that we hired a woman manager of impact who was part of the management team, and when assigning importance to this area with specialized individuals who were able to make decisions, they were able to expand their non-financial services significantly. And we've talked a lot about this in the forum of financial education and health services designed specifically for women. And I wanted to comment about what happened when we carried out this technical assistance project. In the project, we taught them in order to move forward this idea to promote women in decision-making processes, because although we want financial inclusion for them, it needs to start at a certain point. And so in this project, we did 3 things. First, we did an assessment of the human HR processes, and we developed processes that were specific on how to foster hiring and the promotion of women. We implemented a mentoring program for women, and we led a series of conversations on topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the management team. And we worked on it for a year, and during that time, they have doubled the representation of women in middle management, and they added 2 women to their board of directors. Another initiative is that they have created a gender committee that answers to the board, and they have the task of implementing these initiatives. And they also implemented several policies, like, for example, prevention of gender-based violence. And going back to the topic of gender approach investment, throughout this time from Deacon Impact, we've worked more than 5 million, we've given more than $5 million to this company. And so I love this example, not just because it's a great story of success, because it is a success story and we're super proud of these results, but also because I think that it shows how a vision with a gender perspective can generate change. We know that these things don't happen overnight, but when we have an ecosystem that is robust with a gender approach, and when I speak about ecosystem, I'm speaking not just about us from Deakin Impact, I'm speaking about our own investors who are prioritizing gender equality. I am speaking also of allies like ProMujer. I am speaking of organizations such as USAID that can provide funds and technical assistance. And so when we have this integration throughout the ecosystem, then a loan or an investment can make a change. And so I think that this is teamwork. Thank you very much, Rachel. I have another question over here. It focuses on integration and how can we work on everything as a whole. Griselda, I think this is a question for you. Mario from Grameen, Costa Rica, an institution or an organization that cares for or serves women, 100% women who are in vulnerable situations. They say many microfinancial institutions support informal economies that basically live in poverty. Is it possible for institutions such as yours can build bridges with the government so that they can be a joint effort to formalize businesses to increase the productivity of their entrepreneurships and link these informal entrepreneurs and have them become a formal sector? Thank you for your question. Definitely, the Central American Bank, additionally to offering funding through banking and lowering it to financial institutions and non-regulated institutions, it also presents agendas and support to country strategies and government strategies. I I remember what you said about intentionality, but we also have an open communication channel where you can report not just for bad things, but also for good things. And in this channel, you can tell us any information. I take note of your question and I will pass it on to verify or check within the country agenda that Costa Rica presently has how the topic of intermediary collaboration work is taking place and how this is helping to the linkages that you are asking about. There is an important logic in Costa Rica particularly, and it is development outside of GAM from the metropolitan area, which is contributing to these linkages or productive linkages in the free zones. And so I think that this is something that could be beneficial for Costa Rica. Thank you, Griselda. Maria Liliana? It's always complicated to prove with data. Data is something that we need to work on. we all have to work on it as a team, because showing results of the work that we are doing from investment and second tier, the first tier, from ProMujer, how are you working on this topic? Well, ProMujer, ever since 2017, has been working on digital transformation, and data has to do with the transformation processes in the digital world. Through these digital transformation processes that we've had, we've been able to create a data warehouse. Why? Well, because ProMujer has 4 lines of action. Microfinances. This is where we get a lot of information from clients, from the late payments, where they live, their capacity to pay back, and the range of loans that they are getting, their family information. We have health information as well, because many of our clients receive a package with health services, and not just that, but also their relatives can also receive health support and insurance as well. And this is why we look on skills and education and strengthening for entrepreneurship, as well as an area on gender and what we call the ProMujer Gender Lab. And so having all this information, it could not be just loosely hanging about. So we have been able to connect this from a data warehouse to figure out if this holistic model is making an impact. Why holistic? Well, because we cannot look at a woman or a beneficiary as just a client receiving a credit or a loan. We need to see that she's healthy and physically and mentally healthy. We need to know that they have the ability so that they can continue strengthening certain skills so that they can manage their business, and also to do the other tasks that she has in her community and family. And we need her to feel and understand the gender perspective, which has is the economy of care, what her role is, and how can she look for opportunities in her family, and how the man also comes and contributes. And so this data warehouse house has allowed us to find the correlation that exists between the services that we provide. This is one way in which we've invested time and funds. The second thing is we need to have data owners. And so each one of the team has an individual who is responsible for looking at the data, analyzing the data, and there's also the person that strengthens the and generates indicators that can be used for the services that we provide, as well as the philanthropic projects that ProMujer has. One of the things that we have done is that we've established a very close alliance with 60 Decideles, and this is the third consecutive year of working with this financial institution where, for example, we work with them to, because they didn't have any questions on the agency of women, which is the capacity to decide without having anybody else influence them so that they can make a decision, be it financial or be it on their children's education. So we worked with them. We piloted the project in the first year, and then the second year they brought it to all the microfinancing institutions globally. They included the question. And this year, or rather on 2022, we worked on also on important questions based on the holistic model. Many microfinancing companies offer other service, not just credits for women. So topics on education, training, and health also have an influence in how women have an impact in their family and how they have a financial positive impact in their communities. And so these are some of the things that we are starting to do. We are also working in the southeast of Mexico on a financial product that is called ProMujer Digital, which, if it works, it can become into a fintech. But this is a digital financial product that is reaching different states in the southeastern region of Mexico. And there we are analyzing. The first assessment we did was on the hybrid model for entrepreneurship. You're not going to give a loan to a woman who has never been exposed to using digital tools if first I don't work on digital education or her digital skills. So we're testing if it works with local facilitators and certain things that they do on their WhatsApp or in technological centers versus doing it all digitally because they don't have the skill yet. So all of these assessments, data collection, reports, or benchmarking, with this institution has helped us to make better decisions so that we can use it for next projects or pilots. Thank you, Liliana. We are reaching the end of this panel. In a minute, I would like for you to tell us what have been the greatest results that you've obtained in your institution by implementing this gender strategy internally or with your clients. I'll try to be quick, but one of the great challenges was not just granting funding to be channeled onto the financial sector, but also as CABI, we decided to create a financial sector that was sustainable and inclusive from the design of a program where there are more components than money. Than the funding component, there's support component and technical assistance. There are mechanisms for guarantees. There's seed capital and donations. And so this has helped us to drive forward in a comprehensive way the different dimensions. Based on the gender product, it's important also that we accompany by granting products and services that are for businesses, providing funding, not just for productive purposes, but also to provide comprehensive coverage for the family and in the individual. So I invite the institutions to create access, equitable access, and to cover the basic needs for food, housing, education, health, with the idea of having a context for investment that provides access to services, enabling the productive personal and family development. Maritza? Internally, we are aware of the fact that as we as we see in our clients, we also need to make internal changes. And so we carried out surveys. First, it was done in the organization, and then it's being done by an external advisor on how to improve internally. And this includes the gender component, of course. This year, we had a gender working group and a committee that encompasses members from different regions in the company. And we also have the participation and the opinion of everyone and what can be improved. As part of the clients, it's important for us that both from the indicators where we asked for the roles or the policies that we went over, this is something that we also see in the field because people can say that they do a lot of things, but for us, it's important to do things with the managers to provide follow-up to the questions and also with the clients. For example, we need to be able to provide this information to the institutions and communicate this further. For example, we had a specific client that was providing mentoring or training on digital topics for your company. So they were not very informed, but this is something that can be reminded and told the clients. We can tell them, you have these options. We have health campaigns. And I think the alliance that is being done with the private sector is great, as also with local governments, so that we can provide greater help to institutions because not all of them have the same resources. And well, it's a joint effort. I think that we as investors and the fact that we can put this on the table and generate change and ask questions and ask for reports in an annual way or however you each decide is going to open the way for everyone.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I agree with Maritza's thoughts from the point of view of the investor. Last year, we did some monitoring of the metrics in our portfolio, the baseline due diligence up to this day, how companies have evolved in their gender performance in the different business areas. And we identified that there was an average improvement in their performance, in their gender policies, and it's extremely interesting that in their improvements that are very specific, 75% of companies in the portfolio have achieved their objectives. So that means that yes, there are changes in the terms of inclusion in their products and services and in the ecosystem. So from our point of view, the ecosystem as investors. That's an achievement, being able to be part of this change with those who are working with the clients. Thank you, Rachel. Chuck, 1 minute. Very quickly then. And the work that we've done, the key was our principles. Rachel and Maritza have talked about data collection, and we have done that since the beginning. And now what we're trying to do is to go beyond that and do substantial things, not only collect data, conduct the analysis, get ratings, which we use internally, but perhaps to multiply the impact in the institutions. So for us, the next steps are to have an impact, to make substantial things, not just collect information for our investors, so that there's a check in the box. So we want to continue progressing along this line in the future. Thank you, Chuck. Maria Liliana? 1 minute. Very quickly, at internal level, one of the greatest success has been to create a gender strategy for ProMujer and a campaign against violence with a committee for those type of things, and get aligned with you and women. And externally, the achievements that have happened in the women's empowerment front, and also our forum for investment under a genderless has guided people who want to learn and be able to progress on those lines. And finally, the obligations with a gender approach. Thank you very much to our panelists. Very interesting. We hope to continue working together. We should not be working in an isolated manner, but together. Thank you, Mariana. Now I leave the floor to you. Okay, then we are all here. I hope that the lessons learned have been productive. We are going to ask the moderators to tell us what they learned in the rooms. Araceli, room 1. Thank you very much, Mariana. We had a great panel with a lot of experiences. Among the lessons learned, we have that just like financial institutions need to work on a strategy from the corporate government to promote these programs and funds that support gender equality, it is also important to give also follow-up to the impact of these funds that are investing in a region. We also need to make public the commitment to the gender approach. That is very important in these funds. Our colleagues were saying that having indicators to provide follow-up in order to provide evidence that these funds are being used for the advancement of women. That's important. Also, external partnerships with institutions that have access not only to resources, but also to technical assistance, building of capacities to help entities develop products and indicators, and also improve at internal level in their manuals, procedures, and policies. They said it was very important to include support on financial education, digital financial education, in order to close the digital gap. All of them mentioned that they are not only providing support in terms of funding, but also in technical assistance, and also in providing follow-up and accompaniment to the financial institutions. So they are trying to actually strengthen this financial ecosystem so that it can improve the impact with a gender approach. Thank you, Araceli. Let's now invite Mariano so that he can tell us about the thoughts in session 2. In room 2, we had a panel of experts. There were 3 entities that provide support to financial entities who want to create products that support women's empowerment. From IFC, they were telling us that the IFC has a special business lines where they have provided support to 28 entities with more than $2 billion to promote women's empowerment. In fact, several of the banks who have participated in these seminars these 2 days have been supported by this IFC program. They highlighted the importance of market research for the development of products and also the specific moment and way of developing the products and services. There are different business phases and they develop different products. They spoke about very interesting products that they are creating. Direct loans like mortgages, housing, SMEs focused on women, and also a very interesting product that they are developing on retirement loans for the retirement of business women. We also had a talk with Cecilia from ProMujeres on the 6 years where they have been developing their program. And in reality, they want to hear the voice of women regarding their needs. They don't provide guidelines. They listen to women and they hear their voices on what they want to see developed. They were also explaining that we need to analyze why women don't go to the financial institutions, but they go to friends and family to get funding. We need to encourage them to go to the financial institutions to get the products that they actually need. Not all women have the same needs to develop their business. We need to understand that when we develop products for women, we need to understand the segment. We need to understand that the right decisions in terms of product development is key. We should not attack the need, but what is the right product to be developed? They also said that there need to be non-financial products. That's essential for all this. That's one of the conclusion. And the cultural efforts to develop this product and also long-term relationships. Take a look at successful cases with micro enterprises and have women share their success stories. We also saw how through the support of Margarita Saldaño and her entity, how they provide non-financial services and technical assistance, mainly by encouraging accompaniment and analyzing the type of financing that business women need. We also saw how there is interaction, which is very important, between micro entrepreneurs and leadership. They need to associate themselves so that there is a multiplying effect. And we also discussed data and measurement. We need more data and more measurement of impact of financial products in the region for women. We heard the voice of experience by Adopen Bank with Eva Carvajal, Executive Business Vice President of that entity. It was an entity created for women's loan and then for men. That happened many years ago for both genders. But in addition to that, 70% of the portfolio continues to be women's loans. And with the help of multilateral entities, they have been developing savings products, financial training, digital products for digital training, and to reach the rural areas as a result of the questions. They received the support from different entities and even the government. Definitely, it is profitable to serve women, and the level of risk is lower than other products, and has been statistically measured. Thank you very much, Mariano, for telling us about the experiences in room 2. It seems that understanding women continues to be key. We need to put that into practice. Let's go now to Maria, who is going to give us the lessons to learn from room 3, technology and women's empowerment. Thank you, Mariana. In panel 3, technological development, innovation, and women, we heard the experience of the panelists. Constant innovation in services allows reaching women, enhance options, and guarantee the flexibility that they need and expect. In addition, a greater knowledge of their needs allows us to design financial products and services that generate impact on their digital development. In that sense, we discussed how the development of a digital ecosystem guarantees greater access to services through the use of complementary digital channels that can complement the normal physical challenges. This saves time and costs. For example, the use of chatbots, online services, mobile wallets, and others. The increase in the use of mobile phones has increased access to populations that are difficult to reach. However, they were also saying that there are regions where access to internet is scarce or lacking, mostly in the rural areas. Therefore, we need to have alternatives that allow the reduction of the digital gap. For example, among these alternatives, we have satellite connection with branches and also the digitalization of loan officers. In addition, in the panel, it was concluded that digital literacy of women is essential for the development of their digital skills to guarantee the use of digital services so that we can overcome one of the main challenges, which is the fear of using technology, making available financial education, business strengthening, digital education, and empowerment. They were saying that one of the greatest challenges is that at the level of board of directors and management levels, they need to be involved in the digital transformation and have a banking core that adapts to the needs of the financial service provider and be clear about the goals of digital transformation, prepare the staff, train the staff, and that they can see digital transformation as a benefit for them as employees. And from the point of view of clients in this digital transformation, this could decrease their interest rates because it allows financial service providers to decrease their costs as well, their operational costs. This is an overview of what we discussed in the panel. Thank you very much for sharing these experiences and lessons learned. It's time to come to a close. I want to invite Araceli, who is the Executive Director of Red Camif, to give us some final words about this event that we have been managing together, and to tell you that all participants will be receiving the materials and the recording of everything that we learned during these 2 days. Araceli? Thank you, Mariana. I would like to thank the entire audience who were with us in this important event. It was 2 days with a lot of discussions, listening to very interesting experiences about the progresses made in the area of women's financial inclusion. However, we have also heard that the gender gap still exists and that it's something that we need to continue working on, everyone together with an integrated ecosystem. So there's a long way to go. at strategic level, at the level of product development, and really bring those funds that are available to more financial institutions in Latin America. So it's an issue that we need to continue working on. And we will continue having discussions for a long time, Mariana, on this topic. We would like to thank you as Red Camif for your attendance, FinEquity, Portal FinDev, Red Andares for being with us and organizing this event. And I would also like to thank our sponsors, Comipe, UN Women, the International Organization for Migrations, IOM, APRODEL, for being with us and for also trusting us in the organization of this event. From Red Camif, we would like to wish you a Merry Christmas. We hope that we can see you next year in the next events. And good afternoon. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you all. So we are closing now the forum for 2023 and with the proposal of continuing working together. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.